Hi folks, I'm Matt and welcome to My Expanded Universe, a show where I go through the entire EU in chronological order as best I know how. Folks, we are finally here, Book 3, the thrilling conclusion to Kevin J. Anderson's superb Jedi Academy Trilogy, and this one is called Champions of the Force. Now, this guy is wrapping up all the stories here, but let me backtrack and say, where is Kip Durin now? Well, Kip Durin is in the Sun Crusher and he is going off to the planet, I believe it's pronounced Carida, I don't care. Maybe that's how it's pronounced. I don't care. And he is off to save his brother Zeeth. Now, Zeeth is his older brother who went and joined the Imperial Academy a long time ago. And Kip's like, no way, man, I'm taking you. We're getting out of here. We have the Sun Crusher. We can do whatever we want. And when he gets there, they tell him, oh, your brother's dead. He went, oh, my brother's dead? Fine, then I'll kill your star. I'll wipe you all out. Well, then it turns out that his brother is alive, and he tries to save him at the last minute, but his brother dies anyway, as do millions of other lives. Whoopsie. So Kip Durin has now got the title of being the Butcher. I mean, oh my gosh, he just in just one moment, one day, has wiped out millions of lives in the galaxy. So now he is public enemy number one, right? Now remember, full of rage now, rage at himself, rage that his brother's dead, and so he's continuing down this path. Now eventually folks, of course he's going to be redeemed, but I'll get to that in a minute. So anyway, Luke later on, of course he's trapped still outside of his body. The students finally figure out a plan to get Luke back within his body and defeat the spirit of Exar Kun. Hooray! So everyone is happy there. Dala, on the other hand, Admiral Dala has come out of the Maul cluster by this time. Actually, in Book 2 she's done this, and she is wreaking havoc, man, on different planets. Well, they finally punch her in the nose. She basically loses most of her fleet and has to retreat. And the thing I like about Dala, let me just pause. Admiral Dala is probably my favorite villain in a way. I don't know. I really like Timothy Zahn's, of course, Thrawn. But Dala, to me, is just a little bit better, and I'll explain why. Dala is someone who feels like and she does have something to prove, right? The only reason she got the rank of admiral is because she was Tarkin's lover. But no, she is definitely qualified. Sure, that's why she got the rank, but she is qualified. Well, every time, in every book, it seems like she screws up more epically as she keeps losing Star Destroyers and everything. And you're thinking, oh man, she is one big screw up. But as time goes on, and as time will, where we're going to be talking about Admiral Dala, she grows as a character and she gets into better positions of power each time we see her. She's a little bit better. And the reason I like this is because she is someone that always learns how to, recover from making a mistake. Now then she goes on to make an even bigger mistake, but then she bounces back from that and becomes even a bigger threat. The reason I like that is that's kind of how life is. You're going to get knocked down. You're going to make mistakes, but you can pick yourself up and make yourself better because of them. You can learn from those mistakes. Dala does somewhat, but she continues to fail. She's the admiral that fails so much but makes her way up the chain either way. But because I do argue that she just gets better and she learns from these lessons and grows as a character. And that's obvious when we talk about these years later, when I talk about where Admiral Dala ends up. But this is our first introduction to her, and I absolutely liked her because I liked seeing a villain that wasn't perfect. You don't have to have, she's the anti-Thrawn in a way. Thrawn is perfect. He's very calculating. He makes little mistakes. Dala basically wears her heart on her sleeve and makes too quick a decision, and it bites her. But then she picks herself back up and goes back at it again, and it hit, when she gets knocked down, she gets up and charges harder. Then she gets knocked down harder, and she picks up and charges even harder. And it's just back and forth here. But I actually love that about the character. It's not that she's a lovable screw-up. It's just that she makes mistake after mistake after mistake and has learned from it, where Thrawn, well, all he did was make one mistake, right? But he is almost perfection, and it's cool to have a villain like that, but not every villain in the Empire should be perfect or perfectly evil or perfectly a mastermind. And I don't think Dala was any of that, but she was someone who was more realistic. I say these characters are more realistic because I feel like Kip Durin was very realistic. I really do, because as a kid, You have the Force, you're like, wow, this is great. But you got this young angst here. Exar Kun comes around, he makes a serious case. You're like, yeah, why not? I need more power. I need to go, I can save my brother. I can do all this stuff. I can have a family again. I mean, I get it. As a young kid, a lot of people who wouldn't be tempted by Exar Kun, right? And then of course, he makes a big mistake, a huge mistake. You know, he lets his anger gets the best of him and the dark side get the best of him. And then, you know, he learns his lesson and recants from it. Now, more on that later. Now, there's so many side stories here. I want to go back and kind of touch on each one. Wedge Antilles has actually led a mission into the Maw installation. They're trying to capture the Maw installation, you know, kind of capture whatever Imperial scientists are still there. Most of them do escape though, but they capture the installation. That's where he and Qui Zux kind of get familiar with each other during that mission, and they fall in love. I love Wedge and Qui together. I love it. It makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. Here you have this pilot, he's about fighting, he's about taking orders, that's all he knows. Then you have this scientist who's kind of an egghead, who knows nothing about action and adventure, just wants to be in a lab, someplace that, you know, Wedge would never be caught dead in. This whole opposites attract. She's an alien, he's an ace pilot. I love it. I love that connection there that Kevin J. Anderson made. Now, of course, Qui is not in the Rogue Squadron books because that happened before all this. So before we saw Wedge as basically the loner. Well, now it really ties well with Kevin J. Anderson's trilogy that he and Qui are together now, because you could like, oh yeah, I remember Wedge. Oh, he got his own girl. Qui's someone who's you know potential. She's a big side character in Kevin J. Anderson's storyline, but she doesn't need to be a romantic interest of Luke. Please forbid. Don't give me any more romantic interest of Luke. Make a character and then kind of not push her off, that sounds awful, but put Wedge and make that a couple. That's great. Now there also is a beautiful story that the Cathedral of Winds gets rebuilt, and so Akbar and Leia are there to see its rededication, so basically kind of ties up the story that was put in the first book. You also have the story of Mon Mothma. I told you I'd get around to it. Mon Mothma is poisoned. And so Silgal, the Jedi student who's the healer, she goes and helps heal her, but she has to go into her atoms and just pull the disease out one by the Force. And if I remember right, it's described as Mon Mothma has her hand over this bowl, I think, and as her fingertips are forming, out comes this like goo or brown liquid or whatever, and that's the disease that Silgal is slowly, tirelessly, it's taking a lot of her Force energy to do this. She's having to take breaks. She's wearing herself out because she knows that Mon Mothma, the chief of state, has little time left if she doesn't cure her completely of this disease, this poison that she's been, they try to assassinate her with. And so she's pulling this out of her one by one. It also shows the New Republic that, yeah, we made a good decision letting Luke do the Jedi Academy, because look how helpful these Jedi are. That was basically the point of that storyline. Another thing that not many people know is that Kevin J. Anderson wanted to kill Mon Mothma off, and Lucasfilm said no. Now again, why would George Lucas check off, no, you can't kill Mon Mothma, you can't kill any movie character? Why would it matter if it wasn't in canon with the other books? With the movies. Of course it was. And they didn't want to kill off a movie character. No, not even someone as small as Mon Mothma. But Kevin J. Anderson, please, can I kill off Mon Mothma? And they said, absolutely not. They said, okay. So Mon Mothma got to live, but originally she was slated to die if Anderson would have had her way, or had his way. And that's really cool when you think about it. Now, as for Kip, of course, he is redeemed. He comes back to the light side, and later on, everyone has a big problem with Kip during getting off, easy in a way, because yes, he killed millions of lives. He is called the Butcher right now, and he has a really bad name. And of course, that makes Luke's Jedi Academy look very dangerous. But Luke says, hey, he learned his lesson. He was tempted by Exar Kun, the dark side spirit. It's almost like that's one of his excuses there. And Kip knew what he was doing, but at the same time, who helped him down that road? An evil Sith spirit. We didn't see that coming. Let's give him a break. And people are like, whoa. They just forgave him? No. Kip's going to live with this burden for the rest of his life. And in the storyline, and some stories other than others, it's really a big burden for him to be called the Butcher. It's an embarrassment. It's just a heavy weight that's on his shoulders, and he's going to have to live with. Now, like I said, a lot of readers hated that. They said, oh, come on, they would never just forgive and forget. Well, really? Because everyone was willing to forgive and forget Darth Vader. When Anakin got redeemed in Return of the Jedi, I was like, oh, he sacrificed himself for the good in the end. Oh yeah, by the way, he killed billions of people. back in the day. So maybe because Kip Durran didn't make a sacrifice at the end is maybe why people had a problem with him, because if he made a sacrifice, he's dead. Okay, good. At least he's dead. But I guess because he lived, people are like outraged of it. I can see their point. I can see their point where Kip would be, that would kind of be kind of hard to swallow. Like, why would the New Republic let this guy walk around? Because it's like, okay, Luke, did you not notice he killed millions of people by being tempted by the dark side? What happens if he gets tempted again? I mean, you know, do we really need to take that risk? But, you know, Luke put his word out. He stepped up for Kip. He understands, you know, he made a mistake and we need to push back by it. And because Luke knows that Anakin Skywalker made the exact same mistake, you know, except it took him over time. It didn't take him that, you know, Kip Durran took a lot less to kill millions of people. But the thing is, though, I understand Luke's point of view there, and I kind of agree with it too. We don't want Kip to die. We don't want him to go to jail forever, even though that would have been an interesting story plot line that he gets a lifetime sentence. But I remember a lot of fans online, that's another big problem they had with Kevin J. Anderson. They thought the story with Kip Durran was unbelievable. Why would they forgive and push on? Well, they never really do, is the point I'm trying to make. They never really do. And when you have someone like Luke Skywalker vouching for you, you tend to give a little leeway, especially when everyone is readily accepting Anakin Skywalker's redemption. Why can't we accept Kip Durran's? Now, overall, this story is excellent. I remember finding out about this story when my dad took me to Seattle. We were about to get on the plane back, and we stopped by the bookstore before we went to the airport. He said, hey, why don't you get a book, buy a book to read on the plane. I was like, awesome. So I walked around and I saw all three books. All three books had come out back then. Now, this is before really the internet was a big deal. And so unless you went to the bookstore a lot, you didn't know that Star Wars was coming out. And I was still a kid without a driver's license. So I was really shocked to see them. I was like, whoa, shut up. There's more books. And I remember this is the last time that I ever would check, because I always check the preface to see, does it mention the Timothy Zahn's books? Because if it doesn't, then they're not part of the canon. Well, I kind of realized at that point, oh, all these books are going to tie together. That's awesome. And so I asked my dad if I could buy 3 books. He went, 3? You're going to read 3 books on the plane? I was like, no, Dad, but it's a trilogy, and I need to have all 3. And I remember he bought them for me. And I still have the paperbacks, the original paperbacks he bought me. But on the way back, I didn't read them because, like, well, I'll just read them when I was very tired. And I said, when I get home, I'll read them. Well, when we got home, we went to a dinner function, and I was with one of my friends. I was telling him I just bought these 3 Star Wars books. I was super excited. And the person in front of him was an old friend of his who he had brought to this function. And he turned around and he told me, he said, hey, if you're going to read those books, you need to read the Dark Empire comic books first. That man was Bruce from my Prince of the Universe podcast. It's the first time Bruce and I ever met. Our first conversation was about the Jedi Academy Trilogy. He had just read it. He went, yeah, it ties into the comic books. And again, like I said, I didn't know that. I was like, wait, the comic books are part of they're in continuity? And I was like, oh. And I remember the next day I went out to the comic book store, got on my bike, went to the comic book store, bought everything of Dark Empire, read it, and started buying and reading Tales of the Jedi too. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this comic book stuff is great. So it actually got me to start collecting the comic books as well. That was the point. I started reading the comic books too. So Kevin J. Anderson's trilogy is big for so many reasons, but I do think it's honestly it would be in my top 10 best Star Wars books. I don't know if it'd be in the top 5. It may be in the top 5 too, but just for so many reasons, it had so many firsts, including the comic books, and there was a really big thing it did. But it's just and then changing the storyline, like moving forward with more Jedi, not just being Luke now. Now there's more Jedi in the galaxy. It's something that you're seeing that's going to impact the storyline from that moment forward. And I just love the Kevin J. Anderson trilogy. I think it's awesome. But what do you think? Do you like it? Do you agree with me? Maybe you do, because not as many people did back in the day. Or do you just not like Kevin J. Anderson for a lot of the reasons I listed? Let me know in the comments below, and hey, I'll see you next time